Well, Deputy Speaker, it has been such a significant week for us Labor people as we have celebrated the life and leadership of Gough Whitlam. Gough Whitlam was an enormous visionary, and we've heard over the last week such important statements of that on both sides of the House, of this big man, this big thinker who brought big ideas into this parliament. Gough Whitlam spent a decades-long career in this parliament fighting for a fair go, for the right of all Australian children to have the best quality health care and, most importantly, to have access to education. And since that time, Deputy Speaker, education and access to education has become an article of faith for Labor. Right. Labor leader after Labor leader after Labor leader has fought for the right of every Australian child to have the opportunity to get the best education. We saw under the Hawke and Keating governments Year 12 retention rates go from about 45% of all young people in this country to 77%, Deputy Speaker, one of the great unsung achievements of that government. And every leader since then has joined this fight, and we do today in this same tradition. Now, Deputy Speaker, I've spoken a little bit about Gough Whitlam, and we know that really that was a very different Australia that he was the leader of. If you don't mind, I'll have a few moments to have my own words on this.
The member for Herbert.
Australia was a very different place under the time of Whitlam. My mother tells me that people put on a hat and gloves before they went into town, Deputy Speaker. God Save the Queen, I think, was our national anthem. But one of the features of that time was that families around Australia and parents around Australia had to make a very cruel choice about which of their children would go on and get the access to higher education that all of those young people deserved. And in my mother's own family, they had to make that difficult decision. 3 daughters and 1 son. Who do you think, Deputy Speaker, got the chance to go on and have the opportunity to access higher education? So I say today in this tradition that we are opposed to the Americanisation of our system. We are opposed to 100,000 degrees. We are opposed to a system where the young people of this country have their access to higher education determined by the size of their parents' wallets rather than the intellect and the motivation of those young people. Now, I want to talk about some of the issues that we see with this system. When I think we hear those on the other side of the House argue about this system, they are unfortunately very clouded by their vision of Australia, the sort of chums that they went along to private schools with or that they went to university with, the people that many of them represent in their electorates. But I want to tell them a little bit about what happens in my electorate, and I want to talk about the suburb of Springvale, Deputy Speaker, one of the suburbs I'm very proud to represent. Do you know what the median income is in Springvale? Per household, it's $49,000, Deputy Speaker. That means half of the people that live in the electorate of Springvale live in a household where $49,000 is less than their entire family income. So I just think it's important that we put this into context. When we talk about $140,000, $100,000 for degrees that we will see, that we'll know we'll see because Universities Australia have told us this, we have to put it into context that we are talking about more than double the entire annual household income for one of these families. Now, when I talk to these families about how this will affect the decision to educate their children, they tell me that they'd be incredibly uncomfortable with taking on anything like that level of debt. And I think if your household income was $49,000 a year, you probably wouldn't feel too excited about taking out a $100,000 loan either. Now, I really want to spend some time addressing the argument that's been made that because there will be scholarships provided, that somehow this will resolve the equity argument. Firstly, I want to just point out how profoundly unfair that is. Why should we take this sort of handful of the brightest young people in lower socioeconomic families and decide that they're allowed to go to university when much broader ranges of students in sort of more wealthy families will get the opportunity to go to university? In Australia, that's just simply not how we do things. But the second point I just make, Deputy Speaker, is that when we look at the experience of trying to deal with the equity problem with scholarships overseas, we just see that it simply doesn't work. And we know that those on the other side are so in love with the American-style system. I'll take a lead from there. When we look at a university like Harvard, they have enormous problems getting equity in their undergraduate populations. So what do? They say to every American family, if your family earns less than $40,000, you can come to Harvard 100% for free. They'll pay your fees, they'll pay your board, they'll pay for your food, they'll pay for everything. Of their 1,650 freshman students that came in last year, do you know how many came in under that program? 15. And the reason for that, Deputy Speaker, is because this is about setting expectations. We want the message to go out to every young person in this country that you are entitled to a fair go. And like every Labor Party caucus before us, we will fight to the end on this issue.
I thank you, Member Hotham.